Hi, I'm Stephanie Strange. Want to hear something scary?
Hello there, I hope you're excited as I am now that we have new videos on the first Tuesday of every month. And we're hoping that we can bring back the weekly videos very, very soon. In addition, I'll be doing email submissions from you guys and making videos out of them on the second week of the month. And I'll be doing monthly live streams again on the last week of every month. When there's not a new video, we'll be doing compilations from our incredible archive of the scariest stories from around the world, so we hope you enjoy.
Naomi always had trouble sleeping. She'd stay awake for hours trying to drift off, and when she did finally sleep, it was always restless and frequently interrupted. Books and TV didn't help. The only thing that helped was playing her favorite video game, Myrtle's Island. It was a simple concept. You played a character named Myrtle and just explored an isolated tropical island. Naomi found it soothing. During especially restless periods, she'd play it every night. Late one evening, Naomi was enjoying her usual session of the game. She kept playing and playing. She stared at the screen for what must have been hours. After such a long session, she got thirsty and decided to grab a drink. She took her eyes away from the screen and gasped. She was no longer in her bedroom. She was on Myrtle's Island. Naomi thought she must be dreaming. She could really feel the hot sand, really see and hear the lapping waves. To her, this was the coolest dream she'd ever had. However, as she explored the island, something was off. It should be beautiful and sunny, but as she approached the water, it became murky. The sky had gone from pure blue to a deep, cloudy gray. Glancing back to the island, she spotted a figure. Shaggy green pixie hair with silver eyes and a grayish-blue hoodie. Myrtle. She ran up to greet her friend. Myrtle didn't respond or even acknowledge Naomi's presence. She just proceeded towards a small wooden shack in the middle of the island. Naomi was already familiar with this structure. It was the Keeper's Shack, a place where she might find a clue leading to her next adventure. Once inside, she looked around. This, too, was different than she remembered. It was supposed to be a simple shack with a dream catcher and a map on the walls. But inside, it had been torn apart. The words, "You can't run," had been smeared on the walls in what looked like blood. At that, there was a loud banging on the tin roof. They both looked towards the door. Nothing. Suddenly, a sinewy, overly long arm smashed through the roof. Myrtle yelled in pain as it violently yanked her up through the ceiling. As soon as Myrtle was pulled out of view, Naomi heard a loud, wet snap, and Myrtle's yell cut off. Through the window, Naomi saw her lifeless body tossed to the side of the shack. She ran out of the shed as fast as she could. This wasn't a part of the game she knew, but she did know that in the game, there was a dock with a boat nearby. That boat would take her to a separate cove, but when she reached it, the boat was gone. Just then, she heard whatever had killed Myrtle approaching, calling Naomi's name in a screeching, hag-like voice. She looked back and came face to face with a creature, tall and shrouded in darkness, its eyes burning bright into her soul. Before Naomi could react, it pounced. The last thing she felt were the talons scratching at her throat, then the herky-jerky snap of her own neck. Her vision slowly dimmed to all red, the words, "You can't run," appearing before her. She was dead. Then suddenly, she was respawned back in the game again. As she heard the creature again, she tried to run, but it was no use. The creature always won. It always caught her. Her vision turned red, yet as before, she respawned. Over and over, repeatedly. Eventually, instead of trying to run, she faced her nemesis, screaming, "Just end it!" This time, when she opened her eyes, she couldn't see the creature. Something had changed. She was back at the shed. Myrtle appeared, but instead of being pleased to see Naomi, she screamed and tried to run. What in the world? Reaching out to stop her, she gasped in shock. Instead of her own arm, the limb was sinewy and overly long. Initial shock dissipated almost immediately as she was filled with a sudden rage and bloodlust. Screeching in a voice that was not her own, she chased Myrtle down, reaching her easily with newfound speed and agility. She raised the taloned hand to her prey's throat and slit it open, blood gurgling, then twisted her neck. Snap. As Naomi roared in triumph, she realized her final exhausted plea had worked. To some extent, anyway. She was still stuck in the game, respawning over and over, only this time, instead of fearing death, she was the monster. And she liked it. The Cunninghams looked at their new baby, Finley, with their hearts full. She had beautiful, deep brown eyes, and everyone fell in love with her, especially her big brother, Lucas. Despite being only 6 himself, he was fiercely protective. They shared a room, and at night, Lucas would read her bedtime stories. Late at night, he'd peek over and check on Finley, just to make sure she was okay. The night before Finley's first birthday, Lucas awoke to a loud slamming sound. The window had blown open, and the shutters were banging against the walls. He looked over at the crib to see Finley sitting straight up with her eyes closed, mumbling something. She had barely started to say mama or dada yet, so it was unusual for her to be babbling so much. Then she fell silent. Lucas rushed over to her, and Finley's eyes shot open. He was horrified to see her wide, suddenly crystal blue eyes piercing into him. This was not his sister. He ran to wake his parents. They rushed in to check on her, but although taken aback, they mainly seemed unperturbed. They said sometimes a toddler's eye color can change, but Lucas felt no such sense of relief. Over the next few weeks, Finley grew fussy. She didn't want to be held. She cried nonstop, and she destroyed the books Lucas used to read to her. Again, his parents explained that she was approaching the toddler phase, and this was normal. But Lucas had a gut feeling they were wrong. He had a feeling it would get worse, because now he didn't know why, but he was afraid of the sister he'd once adored. Over the next couple of years, Finley grew mean and developed a vicious temper. She threw things at her brother, destroyed his toys, and even bit him. By 3.5, their parents were at their wits' end. They couldn't have company over because her tantrums were too much. They were just this side of dangerous. The only thing that calmed her down was coloring with a red crayon. She'd draw, then scribble over the same pictures over and over again. It was always 2 fairies. One day, when she was oddly quiet, Lucas bravely asked her about the fairies. She said they were her real mommy and daddy, and one day they'd come back for her, and she'd make them pay for what they've done. Lucas was upset and scared. Grabbing her hands, he snapped, yelling that their real mom and dad were in the kitchen. Finley screamed and began hitting him. Her eyes rolled back into her head. She grabbed a sharp pencil and sliced at his face and throat. Blood splattered all over their teddy bears. Lucas's parents rushed in. They grabbed Lucas and rushed him to the hospital. Fortunately, he had survived the attack from Finley, but his parents didn't know what to do, blaming themselves for raising such a naughty child. The night before Finley's 4th birthday, Lucas jumped from his sleep, hearing the shutters clang open across the hall in Finley's room. He sprinted in to see what was happening. The windows had opened so abruptly that the glass panes had shattered on the floor. He rushed to her bed to find Finley sitting up, mumbling. As she slowly opened her eyes, he gasped. They were the same deep brown as the day she was born. She reached for Lucas with a smile on her face, something she hadn't done for years. Their parents ran in wondering what all the noise was, and she ran into their arms. They hoped for a happy end to this mystery. But doctors and psychologists had no answers. A spiritual advisor did. The parents were ready to accept any explanation. She told them that the blue-eyed terror must have been a changeling, that fairies live among us. When they have unruly and sometimes even murderous offspring, they can swap the child to be raised by humans for 3 full years. If their child kills one of the other's family, they get to keep the more peaceful human child. If not, they have to swap them back. The only thing the real Finley remembered was sitting with the fairy mother on the night the changeling was brought home. The changeling's parents didn't want their little sociopath back, but it was fairy law. As Finley and the changeling toddler were exchanged, she felt a dark energy. She looked out of the window and saw the monstrous fairy youngster with red, beady eyes. In the magical realm of the fairies, it would gain more power than it ever could in ours. Floating backward towards its parents, the changeling held Finley's gaze with a wicked grin. "I'll be seeing you again soon, sister." Ailani loved her new place on the Big Island in Hawaii. The rent was cheap and it was an amazing location. There was only one real problem. Her roommate, Maya, was a loud insomniac. At first, Ailani was able to ignore Maya's late-night activity, but with each passing night, it got worse. All the lights outside Ailani's room were always on, and Maya seemed to make strange noises through the apartment all night long. Ailani found herself getting less and less sleep each night, and finally, she confronted Maya about it. She thought it was possible that Maya simply didn't realize how much noise she made at night. Maya signed an apology and promised to keep it down, but that night, it was the worst so far. The constant whisking noises and loud stomping, and occasionally Maya raising her voice as well. The only thing Ailani could make out when she did was Maya bursting out in frustration. "I said I'd get it done, I promise. Just don't do anything crazy." The next day, Ailani confronted Maya once again and threatened to move out. She needed her sleep more than anything else. Maya begged her not to leave and offered a solution. "Why don't you take over the master bedroom? It's much quieter in that room, I promise," Maya signed. "I'll even give it to you for the same rent." She also wrote out their agreement on paper as well. Ailani was reluctant to take the offer. The extra space would be nice for the same cheap rent, but she really couldn't afford to lose more sleep because of Maya's weird nighttime habits. Maya insisted that Ailani sleep in the master bedroom tonight just to see how it felt, and if she liked it, they could switch their stuff around tomorrow. Ailani agreed, hoping to finally get a good night's sleep. She had never been in her roommate's bedroom before and was surprised at how beautiful her bed was. Maya explained it was a very sturdy heirloom that had been in her family for generations. A 4-poster canopy bed made from ornately carved mahogany. Ailani couldn't imagine anyone having trouble sleeping in it. That night, she was relieved to find that the master bedroom was much quieter, and she soon fell into a restful and deep sleep. She wasn't sure how long she'd been out when she once again heard that same loud and repetitive brushing sound. To her, it sounded almost like a loud mix of teeth brushing noises with clicking and broom sweeping. It was insidious, invasive. Ailani was furious. Just as she was about to get out of bed and give Maya a piece of her mind, she realized something terrifying. The sounds were coming from under the bed. Ilani froze. Something was in the room with her. She called out to Maya, hoping this was some weird prank, but there was only more skittering and an unsettling clicking sound. In a panic, she reached for her phone, but it wasn't there. Only the cable she had used to charge it. Suddenly, there was tugging on the bedspread. Whatever was moving on the floor was crawling onto the bed. A head poked over the foot of the bed, and for a moment, Ilani thought it was a cat and breathed a sigh of relief. But as more and more and even more of the creature made its way onto, alongside, and above the bed, the moonlight from the window revealed it fully. It was the biggest bug Ilani had ever seen. She backpedaled up to the head of the bed as the gigantic centipede-like creature slithered towards her and clicked with its giant pincers. Terrified, Ilani glanced over the edge of the bed, and the insect's body coiled everywhere around the floor. Adrenaline spiking, she sprang up and tried to leap from the bed to the door. While she was in midair, whip quick, the creature lunged and wrapped its endless body around her, savagely digging its pincers into her flesh. It let out an insectoid screech as Ilani let out a blood-curdling scream. Maya felt the vibrations of Ilani's screams on the other side of the bedroom door. This offering would keep the Ancient One her family line were caretakers for at bay. Otherwise, the giant insect horror would hunt, reproduce with the smaller yet equally dangerous of its kind, and then there would be slaughter. But for now, the ancient centipede would rest again. It should be sated for months this time. Maya breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, she could get a good night's sleep.
Have you heard that the flavored air category is quickly becoming the leading alternative to vaping and smoking? It's a whole new movement towards better habits led by the sponsor of today's video, Fume. Fume is not a vape, but it is a different way to break habits. With flavored air, you can satisfy your oral fixation through a passive diffusion system that utilizes no electronics, vapor, or combustion. I have been using my Fume and I really love the flavor crisp mint. Fume has served over 300,000 customers and you can be the next success story. For a limited time, use my code SCARY to get a free gift with your journey pack. Head to tryfume.com. That's tryfum.com and use code SCARY or scan the QR code on screen to get a free gift with your order today.
Thanks so much for listening. Like and share if this video gave you the chills. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell for notifications. See you next time.